Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, have a really good breakdown for some of the key offseason moves that were made by the Silver and Black. That plus a whole lot more as we close out the week really strong on this Friday, July 14th, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show. Of course, as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, we definitely appreciate you. And we appreciate my man, Ari. He does a great job each and every day making sure we're up on YouTube. We're looking good. We're sounding good. We're doing what we're supposed to do. And like I said, definitely appreciate him. You can check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. If you want to hit me up, it's good at your boy Q254. And, of course, you want to chime in on the show with anything that's on your mind, 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. As a matter of fact, coming up in segment number 3, we'll have your calls and texts as we close out this week really strong. Segment number 2, very excited about segment number 2. Have some breakdowns of the key offseason moves that were made by the Raiders. EJ Snyder from bootlegfootballpodcast.com. He was actually a guest on my radio show on Thursday, Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920. And EJ was the guy that was suggested to me. Multiple people hit me up and said, Q, have you seen this yet? Have you seen this breakdown of key offseason moves made by the Raiders? And I said, no, I hadn't seen it yet. Really busy, just hadn't come across it. And so after I actually took a little bit of time and deep dove into it, it was about an hour and a half long. And EJ and his partner are not Raider fans. EJ and his partner are guys that just cover the NFL, and they do a really good job, and they're doing a summer series, and they're going through every team in the league, and they're on the AFC West. And so just the other day, they had the Raiders. They wrapped up with the Chiefs, I believe, on Thursday. And then today, they're going to have a recap of the AFC West in general. So if you want to check it out, after you check out this show, of course, bootlegfootballpodcast.com, EJ Snyder and company do a really, really good job. So he was a guest on my radio show on Thursday, and I probably had him on the show for about 20 minutes. I could have easily just brought the whole interview to the podcast, but I thought I'd just go ahead and highlight a few of the key offseason moves that EJ was talking about and I was talking about on the show on Thursday. So you'll hear that coming up in segment number 2. Some really good stuff from him. Here in segment number 1, as always, like to give you the news and notes if there's anything real big Raiders related or just NFL related. Like to do it in here in segment number 1. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And off top, I want to talk about running back Josh Jacobs, who is in town right now. He's in Las Vegas. Of course, we know we've been watching that calendar as the 17th is coming around quick, fast, and in a hurry. And 1 p.m. Pacific time on Monday, they've got to have a long-term deal done. He held his camp. Over 250-plus kids were at his camp on Thursday. Then he sat down with Paloma Villicana from Fox 5 Sports, someone that he's known for a very long time, even going back to his time at Alabama, where she covered him there. And so just a tweet that she put out that I actually talked to her about on my show on Thursday was, I'm told by a source close to him being Josh Jacobs, that if a deal is not made between the Raiders and Josh Jacobs on Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific time, Jacobs will not be showing up for training camp. Now, when she says I'm told by a source close to him, that source is him. All right, he sat down and had a conversation with her after the camp that he threw for 250 plus kids on Thursday, and as I mentioned, they're really close. So she said a source close to him, but basically, bottom line, it was him. And so when she was on my radio show on Thursday, I said, okay, if he doesn't show up for training camp, would he be available for week 1? And she said straight up, Q, I can't say. I really don't know. So, I just kind of tried to judge. I didn't think she was going to come out and say, oh, yeah, he's going to play in week 1, or no, he's not going to play. I just kind of wanted to base it off of how it sounded. And from the way it sounded was that it's leaning like he'll sit out a little bit, but she didn't say that. It's just kind of based off almost the way that it sounded. It's just like she was hesitant to talk about it. So my gut feeling is that something's probably going to get done by Monday some way, somehow. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm assuming something's going to get done. And, of course, assuming is dangerous. But I think something's going to get done when it comes to the Josh Jacobs contract. But we'll see, right? I can't count the guy's money. I don't know what he's looking for, and I don't know what the Raiders are offering. So we'll see what happens. But Monday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, a deal's got to be made, or only $10 million. And I say only. That's a lot of money. 1 year, $10 million fully guaranteed deal is what Josh Jacobs could play for if he so chooses to. Now, I also wanted to let you hear what Maxx Crosby, and I just love this dude's his personality, love his drive, love the fact that he just grinds and grinds and grinds and wants to be better and better and better each and every year, each and every day, and he just does not quit. So he put this out on Twitter on Thursday. It's a little bit of motivation from Maxx Crosby. If you ever want to know about him, the person, and just kind of think about the guy that he is and what drives him and what he's all about, this 59 seconds will tell you right here. Check it out.
If it feels like you can never win, that's when you know when you're winning. Everybody's going to have an excuse. The higher and higher you go, the more success you have, people are going to want to bring you back down. But that's them. That's not you. Your competition is with you. No matter what, the higher you get, the more success you have, people are going to want to bring you down to another level that you were previously. And they're going to want to get in your head and make you second guess yourself. But at the end of the day, your battle is with yourself. I don't worry about other shit. I don't worry about what these other pass rushers are doing or what other guys are doing. You know, I respect them. I watch them. I'm a fan, you know, from afar. But at the end of the day, my battle's with myself because I'm the only person I have full control of. I run me. I focus on me. My battles are within. I got to wake up at 5 every fucking day. I probably don't want to sometimes, but I have to. I want to be the best, so this shit is year-round. It doesn't stop. That's how you got to think. Your battle is with yourself. When they continuously try to bring you back down, that means you're just going higher and higher. So keep going, keep working, chase your dreams, and never stop. You're only getting started.
So there's Maxx Crosby, and I thought that was some good stuff right there. I mean, I really did. Just what he's talking about and controlling what he can control, which is him. Right? He's not worried about anybody around him as far as guys that are competing at the same position. He said, I'm a fan, but I'm a fan from a distance, right? He said, the guy I'm fighting is me because that's who I can control. You know, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes I don't want to get out of bed, but I still got to do it because I have to do it, right? And so that's just, again, you can hear the determination in his voice, and you got to love it. And that's why he's been successful. That's why he signed a contract extension. That's why he almost got $100 million from the Raiders. I mean, it's just that's the kind of guy that he is. So love hearing that from Maxx Crosby, especially just less than a couple weeks out from the beginning of training camp. The final soundbite I want you to hear here in segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, news and notes of the day. This actually goes back to Wednesday, and I wanted to put it on the podcast on Thursday. I just didn't have any time. And this is from second-year defensive tackle Matthew Butler, the young man out of Tennessee. He was actually on NFL Network's Good Morning Football on Wednesday, and they just hit him with a couple questions, Raiders related, and then also ask him about quarterback Hendon Hooker, a guy that he played with at Tennessee. So here you go. Here's Matthew Butler on Good Morning Football, and I'll say this before you even hear it. This does not sound like a second-year guy who didn't get a lot of burn his rookie year. Here is Matthew Butler from Good Morning Football on Wednesday.
The Raiders had a big defensive piece in the NFL draft with Tyree Wilson. You already have Maxx Crosby and Chandler Jones. How does Wilson change the dynamics of the Raiders' D? And what's the potential for the Vegas defense?
Yeah, so Tyree, he has all the tools. He could be a great player. And him, myself, everybody else, we're just fighting to help the team. You know, we all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. It's not just about us. It's not just about the defense. It's about the team. And when we put the team first, the possibilities are endless.
You're entering your second NFL season. Last year, you got to play with a pretty exciting quarterback in Derek Carr. This year, there's been so much talk about your new quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be under center. Why is Jimmy the right guy to lead this Raiders offense right now?
Yeah, ton of respect for Derek, ton of respect for Jimmy. I've had opportunities to really have real conversations with both of them. Jimmy, he's a great player, and he's had great success in this league in different circumstances and situations. And one thing about us, we trust that we're going to put the best players in the best position to win games and put us in position to have all the success that we want. So definitely it's a trust thing. We definitely trust upstairs, our coaches, and the rest of our team to just put us in positions to win those games. That's the end goal, right?
Matthew, you played at Tennessee. We were talking about it in the break a little bit. This past draft, 5 volunteers were selected. What are the Lions getting in the quarterback? And could we see him one day as that Detroit's starting quarterback? Yeah,
so Hendon's a good player, and he's an even better dude. I know him very personally. Detroit drafted him for a reason. You know, I hope the best for him. I hope the best for all the guys who came out in this past draft. Obviously myself and everybody who came out in the draft before, and even the draft before that with guys like Trey Smith. You know, I hope the best for them within reason, of course. When we're playing against them, you know, I'm hoping the best for our team and myself. But those are my guys. I'm in great contact with them. There's going to be guys coming out of Tennessee this upcoming year. I hope the best for them. And we're all real close. We built a real camaraderie there at Tennessee. And now I'm just hoping and praying for success for, obviously, myself and them as well. At the next level, this is what we dream of as kids.
So there you go right there. Matthew Butler from Good Morning Football on Wednesday. And I don't know about you, but when I was listening to that, I kept thinking, am I sure this guy is only a second-year dude? Am I sure he's a second-year dude? He just did not sound like it. Had all the respect in the world for Derek Carr. Also has respect for Jimmy G. Talking about, defensive players and talking about the team in general. He just didn't sound like a second-year dude. So it's almost one of those guys that you say he sounds like he has an old soul, right? So there you go. Matthew Butler, I'm excited to see what he could potentially bring to the table in training camp. Everything we've heard, him and Neil Farrell have really worked hard all offseason long, stayed at the facility, didn't go off, stayed around, worked out, continued to work on their craft, and we'll see. We'll see if it pays off when training camp opens up again. The first day of practice is coming up on the 26th. So that's all I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, kind of news and note, just a few really sound bites that I collected. Coming up in segment number 2, breakdowns of a few of the Raiders' key offseason moves by my guy EJ Snyder from bootlegfootballpodcast.com, who was a guest on my radio show on Thursday, Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness. So we'll get to that after I tell you about our partners at eBay Motors, and they've teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So, with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. I talked about Christian McCaffrey. I talked about Austin Eckler. How about I switch things up and go to the wide receiver position? Nah, not talking about Devontae Adams, but Vinny talked about Justin Jefferson. He said, when on the clock for the first overall pick in 2023's fantasy drafts, it's okay to get downright giddy about doing the gritty. That means picking Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson is a guaranteed fit. Over the past 2 seasons, Jefferson led the league in both receptions and receiving yards. He'll remain a dominant number 1 and target monster. Jefferson is a guaranteed fit to ignite the rest of your fantasy football lineup towards winning success. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. From air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, and struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car, because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up, because now you know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. And I'm not talking Russell Wilson. I'm talking eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to get into some breakdowns on a few of the Raiders' key offseason moves. EJ Snyder from bootlegfootballpodcast.com joined my radio show on Thursday. And again, if you have an opportunity to go back, and again, bootlegfootballpodcast.com, that's the site. Check it out. Him and his partner go about an hour and a half long and really break down the Raiders. I mean, from everything to everything, right? From A to Z. They've got everything covered, from the draft to the coaching staff, right, to the salary cap, to the personnel changes, free agents that were lost, free agents that were brought in. I mean, just everything. You name it, they go over it. So I definitely encourage you to go check it out. Again, after you listen to this show. But really good stuff, and I definitely appreciated him being a guest on my radio show on Thursday. And so I just got a couple little sound bites that I want you to hear, just that I thought were key, were key offseason moves that the Raiders made that will really kind of, maybe get you going a little bit when you hear what EJ had to say. So the first one, I think the biggest one that everyone's talking about, and I've talked about quite a bit, and I talk about it with the asterisks, is what Jimmy G brings to a Josh McDaniels-led offense when healthy. Here's EJ Snyder talking about Jimmy G and what he brings to this offense.
It's a great question, and I went down the rabbit hole on this one a little bit, because I think people, and myself included, tend to think of these two guys as really similar, and it's pretty easy to do. They're about the same size. They have about the same touchdown to interception ratio, about 2-to-1. They have roughly the same completion percentage. Jimmy's is a little bit better. So on the surface, I think a lot of people say, hey, these are two sort of mid-tier quarterbacks, and they're the same guy. And they're not. So I dug in to figure out what the difference really is. And when you get down there, Carr throws a lot more times. He ends up with more yards per game, but he also has more attempts. He has less air yards and yet less yards after the catch. So Jimmy is a little bit more efficient. He's a little bit more accurate, but his decision-making isn't great. And that's always been the book on Jimmy G, is that you don't want him throwing 35, 40, 45 times a game. If your team's in that position, something's kind of gone wrong. So I think McDaniels is going to be able to get his spots out of Jimmy G and get that efficiency. He's going to have to back it up with a heavy dose of Josh Jacobs, and he can't sort of, I'll say, get trapped by that siren song of, hey, Jimmy's been really good in his first 20 throws, let's have him make 20 more, because that's where you get into trouble. So they're not the same guy. And the other big difference that really surprised me was Carr's way more experienced. He's got 142 games to Jimmy's 74. He's got almost 5,000 attempts to Jimmy's less than 2,000, 1,700 for Jimmy overall. And I thought that was strange. I thought of these as two fairly similarly experienced players, and, Carr's had a lot more reps than Jimmy.
So there you go. Really good breakdown, I thought, about what Jimmy G brings to a Josh McDaniels-led offense. And, of course, you got to go back and look at the numbers. He's talking about Derek Carr has way more experience than Jimmy G. That's because, Derek Carr, for the most part, didn't miss games. Right? And Jimmy G missed a lot of games. So no matter how many years Jimmy G's played, he's always missed a handful of games, if not more. So, yeah, he just does not have the actual games on wax that Derek Carr has. But thought that was a really good breakdown from E.J. Snyder. But then I took it to a whole nother level, because as I was listening to his podcast and listening to the show, him and his partner went really deep in fourth-round pick quarterback Aidan O'Connell out of Purdue, and they were really high on him. So this is a pretty lengthy breakdown right here, but I had to ask about Aidan O'Connell and what he thinks he brings to the Raiders.
Aidan's a great guy. We got the chance to interview him at the Shrine Bowl, actually down in Vegas back in January, and just a really fascinating player, very self-aware, absolutely no ego or entitlement. He fully expected us, actually, funny story, to tear him apart, because that's what teams do. They pull up your bad plays of your player and say, why'd you do this? And tell us about that. And we started off with some of his good plays, and he was like, what is this? And we're like, this is what we do here. We're here to highlight your strengths. And he really opened up and sort of showed us behind the curtain of his game. But his basic assumption is, hey, I shouldn't have been here in the first place. I was a walk-on. I wasn't a scholarship guy, and I'm going to let it go. I have a belief in my ability. And he will gamble a little bit, and there's some of that lends itself to that Cousins comparison, but he also will send it down the field. He is not a check-down quarterback in terms of the way he likes to play the game. When he thinks he has a matchup he likes, he will let it go, and he was real successful with that in college. And I can absolutely see that continuing into the pros. He will not play scared. I know it's a huge upgrade, and he will learn his lessons and take his lumps. All rookies do as they come to the NFL. But he's going to bring that aggressiveness, because that's just sort of who he is at the core fiber.
You mentioned in the show that he's not a guy, and I've said it before on this show, he's not a guy that I want to see at all this year. Like, if we see Aidan O'Connell out there consistently, then something obviously went wrong with the Raiders' plan in 2023. But it sounded like, from what you guys were saying, that Aidan O'Connell is the guy that, once he gets his feet wet into the NFL, you expect him to be a player, potentially even a franchise quarterback.
It is possible, and that also lends itself to the Cousins comparison. And look, comparisons are always fraught with a lot of things, because
right.
When you talk about an NFL player, when are you talking about that NFL player? It's not the Kirk Cousins now with all his experience in the league, but if folks remember, he came into the league as a fourth-round pick out of Michigan State. He was not the top quarterback even in his draft class, certainly not on his team. He was behind RG3, and he developed into a player after RG3 got hurt, then moved on, got his contract with the Vikings, and has become the Kirk Cousins we all know now. So we see a lot of that same potential. Mid-round player, willing to gamble, coming out of the Big Ten, there's a lot of similarities there. And, yeah, it will take him a little bit. It took Cousins a little bit, too. And, look, they're both still learning, but there are a lot of nice nuggets in what Aidan O'Connell does, how he sees the game, how he leads the team. And, honestly, in his arm talent, there's some similarity to Cousins as well.
So there you go. E.J. Snyder right there talking about 4th-round pick quarterback Aidan O'Connell, and sounds like he's pretty high on him. Sounds like he thinks that he can bring a little something to the table. You heard the follow-up when I'm asking about him being a franchise quarterback, and it sounds like the potential is there. But the question is, when are we going to find out, and how are we going to find out? Right? I mean, you know that he's going to play a lot during training camp. He'll play a lot during preseason. But what does that mean, right? The Raiders went 4-0 in preseason last season, and they ended up the season 6-11. So, right, just because you have preseason success don't mean that you're going to be good during the regular season. So I don't know when we're going to find out or even start to find out if Aidan O'Connell could potentially be that guy. Again, you don't want Jimmy G to miss any time. If he does and it's only a short period of time, then most likely Brian Hoyer will be the guy. If Aidan O'Connell gets in, one of two things happen, right? Either Jimmy G is out for a long period of time and they just said, all right, you know what, we're going to throw the rookie in there and see what happens, or they're just punting on the season and deciding, you know what, let's just see what we got in him, and if we have to, we'll go back to the drawing board and grab another quarterback. Neither one of those scenarios are great. So I'm hoping that number 4, Aidan O'Connell's on the sideline all season long just because. Right? I mean, again, if he's on the sideline, then you feel like the Raiders at least are still in the thick of things. If not, then again, like I said, I think a lot of things went wrong. Well, Aidan O'Connell, he was the 4th-round pick for the Silver and Black. Well, what about the rest of the members of the 2023 draft class? Here's E.J. Snyder talking about just a few of them, and then really his overall thoughts on the entire class, which was Dave Ziegler's first class that he had all his draft picks. He went with 9 different guys, 6 of them on the defensive side of things. So, again, E.J. Snyder from bootlegfootballpodcast.com talking about the 2023 draft class and really singles out a few of the players as well. Here he is.
I like this draft. I thought you're never going to hit every pick. The vast majority, especially the top-end talent, I really liked. I'm a huge Tyree Wilson fan. Again, I'm not a doctor. Some teams had a red flag on him injury-wise. If he's healthy and holds up, he has crazy potential, like more ceiling than almost any player in this draft. He's got a huge frame, and you see him do things on the football field. He's already demonstrated some of this with that length, speed, power. You see him guys just blowing guys off the ball. Really, really, really like Tyree Wilson. Want to see him stay healthy. I think the landing spot in Las Vegas is really good for him, getting to be with players like Chandler Jones and Maxx Crosby and really learning under them. I think the sky's the limit for him if he stays healthy. Michael Mayer, you're not going to see a ton out of him this year. Rookie as a tight end is a tough position to have a lot of contribution, but long-term, I think that's an excellent pick. I can see him as a full-fledged starting wide tight end that goes both ways. He's a better, I'd say, sneakier receiver than some people give him credit for. He has very good hands and is also one of the best blocking tight ends in this draft. Byron Young out of Alabama, another big contributor on the offensive line, is one of those sort of dirty work 5-techs that can lock down an edge, which you absolutely need. You need a guy like that on a defensive line to really be able to get you off the field, because if offenses can move around one end of your line, they're going to get good gains, and you're going to get, you're going to get second and short, you're going to get third and short, and it's going to be tough to end those drives. Byron Young can do that. Trey Tucker, we talked about a little bit about him on the podcast. Super fast, really small. I think he's going to be a role or niche receiver. And plus, he's going to be a special teamer for them, so that could bring them value. And Jacorian Bennett out of Maryland, the nickel that they got in round 4, I like a lot. He's got some lessons to learn. He's going to have to tone down the aggressiveness a little bit. He's probably going to pull some early flags, but he is a dog, loves to stick his nose in there, loves to tackle, which you need to do from the nickel spot. I think he's really got for lack of a better term, a Raider attitude. Nice. I think Vegas is going to love him.
So there you go. Another lengthy answer right there, but you heard what he said. He really likes the draft class that Dave Ziegler has put together. And, on the podcast that I was listening to, again, it was about an hour and a half long. They really went detail by detail by detail on all the draftees that Dave Ziegler brought in, and they did Both the guys really did like the draft class. Now, of course, we won't know how good the draft class is for probably 2 or 3 years, but it's always good to hear a little bit of positivity when it comes to a Raiders draft class, because it's been a long, long time since you heard a lot of positivity when it comes to a Raiders draft class. I thought that Dave Ziegler did pretty well last year, but he still has to have Matthew Butler and Neil Farrell Jr. step up and actually contribute this year to make me really feel like, okay, that was even though a limited amount of picks, still did a really good job. So the final soundbite I have from EJ Snyder from bootlegfootballpodcast.com was really just about the expectations. Kind of went through all the offseason moves, the key offseason moves. So what does he think the floor and what does he think the ceiling is for the Raiders 2023 season? Here he is, short but sweet. Check it out.
Yeah, on the podcast, I put the floor at 5, and that is really worst case. When I'm talking about floor, I'm talking about the wheels falling off. I'm talking about Jimmy G getting hurt fairly early in the season, McDaniels not being able to translate things with the other players, and maybe losing a little bit of the locker room. If that happens, they could be a 5-win team. But again, that's the worst-case scenario. Best case, Jimmy stays healthy. They work the talent they've got. McDaniels is able to bring another year of maturity to that offense. Josh Jacobs stays at or about the level he was at. I'd say they have a 9-win ceiling, and that could get them into the playoffs.
There you go. The floor being 5. And you heard what he said. Everything went wrong if they win 5 games in 2023. And he thinks that, the ceiling could be 9. And that could maybe potentially put them into the playoff hunt. And again, I think that you got to have double-digit wins to get to the playoffs, but you never know. You never know how things shake out. If they win 9 games, they might be right there. And if they win 9 games, that's a 3-game better than what they did last year. So it definitely would be a great step in the right direction, but a lot of things have to go right. A lot of things have to go wrong for them to win only 5 games. A lot of things for them to have to go right for them to win 9 games. But I thought that you'd enjoy that right there. Little breakdown from EJ Snyder on all the Raider key offseason moves. Again, bootlegfootballpodcast.com is his show, but he was on my radio show on Thursday, Unnecessary Roughness, Raider Nation Radio 920. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about Birddogs. And, well, Birddogs make you look good. A Birddog stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Now, let's be honest with each other. When is the last time any of us thought that we look sculpted? Right? I'm gonna walk out one day and have my Birddogs on, and the wife's gonna say, "Man, husband, you look sculpted." And then I'm going to say, all right, how much money do you need, right? I got to pay for that kind of compliment. No, but Birddogs is going to hook you up. They're going to make you feel like that. Birddog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Birddogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks like khaki but stretches, so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Birddog uses anti-stink, sweat, wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. It's similar to kind of the dry fit that I like to wear, but it's shorts, and it's Birddogs. So all you got to do right now is go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. Again, that's birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL. Promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Jordan in Oregon. He's calling to ask about training camp and what the Raiders 49ers joint practices might look like. Plus, talks a little Jimmy G. Here he is, Jordan in Oregon.
Hey, what's going on, Q? Jordan in Oregon. I wanted to chime in on your podcast, and I'll just speak on something I haven't heard anybody really speak on in a while, and it's the Raider 49er joint practice, week of joint practices, I believe, rolling into that first preseason game, the second week of August. Anyway, Q, I didn't know if there's something you could speak on with that, and if you have any just details that maybe we haven't heard about that as far as just kind of what the plan is, the dates, and what us fans can expect from that. And so that's kind of where I wanted to chime in on my call is from the moment the schedule's released back in obviously a couple months ago, back when we first started hearing about that 49er Raider joint practice, I've been pretty stoked about that. And I just want to get your take on that, Q. I think there's a lot that we could come away from that first joint practice week. And one thing is obviously with Garoppolo being in another scheme. But I was kind of wondering if you think there'd be any way for the Raiders to kind of maybe pick Shanahan's brain during that joint practice and see, if they do have Jimmy G out there practicing, like, go over some things that work for him. And I don't know how much the coaches share. Obviously, these two teams being in separate conferences, I just wonder if they can get a little more involved in that situation. Then also, the 49ers have a very, very deep defensive line. They're just stacked, as we all know. Wonder if there's any takeaway on us coming away with any potential 49er cuts, and if you've got anybody in mind, Q, whether it be the defensive line or, we know the 49ers can't keep all 4 of their QB prospects, I believe they have now. And so I just thinking that there could be some big-time takeaways from that joint practice, and I want to get your thoughts on that, Q. Peace out.
Jordan, thanks for the call. I appreciate you as always, my man. And we haven't really got too much training camp information. Everything that I've brought to the podcast as far as training camp goes is what I have, right? The rookies report on the 20th, the veterans report on the 25th, the first day of actual practice is on the 26th, and it looks like the first off day is going to be the 30th. And so there should be some media availability, but the 49ers are the first preseason game, so they are going to be having those joint scrimmages similar to what the Patriots did last year. They'll be here in Las Vegas, so that should be fun. But as soon as I get some information on that, I'll definitely pass that along. As far as Jimmy G and Kyle Shanahan goes, I don't know. I haven't really talked to him very often. Last time I talked to Kyle Shanahan, it was at the owners' meetings in Phoenix, and I say talk to him. I may have asked him a question or two. He didn't really look like he was too much in the, hey, let me talk about Jimmy G. He's no longer on the Raiders football team, so I don't think that he's going to be talking, or no longer on the 49ers, football team. He's now a member of the Silver and Black. I don't think he'll be talking to Josh McDaniels or anyone else about what you can get, how to get the most out of Jimmy G. I don't see that. And Kyle, when others asked him questions about Jimmy G, just kind of rolled his eyes. And I think the lack of availability really annoyed the hell out of Kyle Shanahan because he did not seem like a guy that wanted much to say or much to do with one Jimmy G. But we'll see. We'll see what happens when he's here, in Vegas when they do those joint practices. We'll probably ask him a couple more questions about Jimmy G and see if we get anything. But, again, that'll be once they're in town for joint practices. But, Jordan, it's always good to hear from you. Thanks, my man. I do appreciate you. Next up, got a text from Raider Rob. Q, it's Raider Rob from Pittsburgh. Here's a question for you. If Baltimore would call you and offer you a trade, Patrick Queen for Josh Jacobs, straight up, would you pull the trigger? I'm pretty sure Jacobs will end up making $10 to $12 million a year. What do you think Queen is going to make? $13 to $16 million range? Just a thought. Keep up all the hard work you have been putting in. You'll never truly understand how appreciated you are. Raiders. That's Raider Rob in Pittsburgh. And thank you for the kind words, my man. I definitely appreciate you. And for me personally, I wouldn't trade Josh Jacobs for Patrick Queen. I wouldn't. But remember, I'm a Josh Jacobs fan. I'm not saying that the Raiders wouldn't. I don't think that they would. I really don't. And I'm not too sure what the market would look like, what the money will look like. He's not going to get Roquan Smith money. That's for sure because he's not Roquan Smith. I think that the Baltimore Ravens would be interested in trading him because they're not going to invest a whole lot of money in the linebacking room, right? They already have a linebacker making $100 million. They're not going to invest a whole lot more. They'll go and draft a guy. And the thing about the Ravens are they're really good at drafting. So, they'll get rid of a guy a year early as opposed to hold on to him and try to get rid of him a year late, right? So I don't know if the Raiders would be interested in trading Jacobs to Baltimore. He'd have to sign his tender before they could trade him anyway because he doesn't have a contract, so they can't do that as of right now. But really, we'll find out a lot on Monday, 1 o'clock Pacific time, if he has a contract extension or not. And for some reason, I do believe he will. But again, that's just me, so we'll see how it all shakes up. But thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Nathan Glass out of Cali. He's calling to talk Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, and a little bit more. Here he is, Nathan Glass from Cali.
Hey, Q. Nathan Glass, California. Just wanted to break something down to you real quick, real short. Do you believe Josh Jacobs is holding out from taking care of his business because he's waiting on Saquon Barkley? Saquon Barkley is also looking for an extension, and you know how players want to be the highest paid in their position. So do you believe Josh Jacobs is actually waiting for Saquon, and vice versa, Saquon is actually waiting for Josh Jacobs, kind of going back and forth? But the other part of my question is, but not really a question, the statement. Josh Jacobs gave you guys his all last season. And, you know, he had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. And I understand the way the NFL is going. You know, like you said on the other podcast the other day, you said, you know, the NFL feel like they could find, a team feel like they could find this guy in the 4th round, 5th round. But look, let's be honest. 2,000 yards from scrimmage is not easy to come by. It's not easy to come by. And if you figure Josh Jacobs has now emerged as a continuous 14, 15, 1,600-yard back and a 2,000 yard per scrimmage guy, pay that man. Show your appreciation for that man. Please. Because you don't want to go cheap and you got him out there thinking like, well, I'm out here giving my all, putting my body on the line, and the Raiders treated me cheap, so I'm not going to give it my all. You don't want that to happen. You don't want that mentality to slip into his head. So show the damn appreciation. Pay the man his money that he deserves. I'm not saying, you know, some outrageous damn contract, but you know, Q, you know what it can be, man. Something, you know, 3 years, something, you know, something nice little guarantee, you know, something appreciation. He's a 2,000 yard per scrimmage guy, man. Come on, man. Show some appreciation for the guy, man. That's all I'm saying, man. Just pay that man, get it out the way, and get the season rolling, and let's see what comes from it. Thanks for taking my call, Q. Have a good day.
Big Nate Dogg, thanks for the call. Definitely appreciate you. And I'm sure there's a little of that wanting to wait until one guy gets paid so another guy can one-up him. But there's not much time to wait anymore, right? As I mentioned multiple times, the deadline is Monday, 1 Pacific time, 4 Eastern. The waiting period is really over, right? Because if you wait past 1 o'clock to try to one-up the next guy, well, then all of a sudden you're stuck and you can't sign that contract extension. All you can sign is the 1-year tender for $10 million fully guaranteed. And the thing about it is, I don't know, and maybe because I'm here covering the Raiders and not the Giants, I just don't see all the value that's there in Saquon Barkley. And maybe I'm doing him like the rest of the league is doing running backs in general, but I feel like he's been injured a lot. I mean, he's got an injury history. I know people talk about Jacobs being banged up, but he's only missed a handful of games in his career. I feel like Saquon Barkley's missed a ton, right? And he did have a really good year last year. He really helped Daniel Jones out a lot. I know that the Giants need him, but you know, it almost feels like, oh, he's going to get the biggest money, and then Josh Jacobs will get under it. It's almost like that's the expectations. Maybe that's because he's in the New York media market. I don't know. But that's just kind of the feel I get. Even when I'm doing ESPN national radio, it's like Saquon Barkley, is he going to sign that deal? Like, he's a big deal. And I'm like, hey, don't forget about Josh Jacobs. He led the league in rushing. Don't forget about him, right? So it's so weird. It's almost like they're valuing Barkley higher than Jacobs. And I don't really think, if anything, they're kind of running neck and neck. But like I said, Barkley's missed more time than Josh Jacobs has. So, I mean, I don't know. That's just me. We'll see. Maybe, again, like I said, maybe I'm just closer to the Raiders product than I am the Giants. So that could be me just being, you know, having some silver and black glasses on. And I'll own it. Again, I'm a Josh Jacobs guy, so maybe there's a lot of that has to do with it as well. But thank you for that call, my man. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Assassin Ghost. Hey, Q, the Assassin Ghost here. Listening to your piece on Gruden, and I had a question. Do you think the resignation was a domino effect? Do you think things would have been different if he had stayed? Do you think the Ruggs situation would have happened? Do you think the Raiders would have had a better season this past season? Do you think Carr would still be a Raider? He was playing his best football under Gruden. I'm not a person that lives in the past, but I do sit back sometimes and think how much of a whole the thing with Gruden changed the direction of this team. Not saying the new regime can't get it done, but Gruden had a swinging in the right direction. That's from the Assassin Ghost. Thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. And yeah, it's so hard to tell. You know, I mean, look, the Henry Ruggs situation, awful situation, happened in the bye week. So there's a very good chance that could have still happened. There's also a very good chance that Derek Carr could still be a Raider because, you know, John Gruden had opportunities to move on from him, and he didn't, right? John Gruden had an opportunity to bring in Tom Brady, and he didn't. He stuck with Derek Carr. And you're right, Derek Carr played his best ball with John Gruden, but he also played the longest with John Gruden, right? He had the longest time with him, and you saw him grow in that offense. So I don't know. I don't like to say, well, if this didn't happen, then this wouldn't happen, and this can't. You know, it's just so hard to tell, right? I mean, it's easy for us to go back and say ifs and buts and all that good stuff, but I really can't call it. But, the two things that you did mention in specific, Ruggs and Carr, the Ruggs situation could have easily still happened, and the Carr situation, he still easily could be a Raider. That's really all I got for that. But thank you so much for that text. It's good to hear from you. I definitely appreciate you. And we'll close out with a call from Proto in the 778. He's calling to talk about the call from Raider Roy and his thoughts on linebacker Patrick Queen. And I'll tell you this, man, Proto's pretty fired up. Here he is, Proto in the 778.
Hey, yo, Q, this is your boy Proto from the 778. I am calling to respond to Raider Roy. And I'm going to say this. I agree, man. I agree with him. I don't think we need to go and get Patrick Queen. I really don't. I understand that the team might have some weaknesses, and linebacker might be a really big weakness. But I just don't think getting somebody like Patrick Queen, giving him draft capital, and an extension to see if he's going to be a good fit or not. Guys, remember Corey Littleton? We're still paying him for that deal that we gave him. So I just don't think it's a good fit, man. Honestly, I get it. The linebacker core is probably not that great. But truthfully, we don't really know till the season starts. And I just don't think it's smart to go and try to fix every single area that you got by going out and getting somebody. At some point, you just got to buckle down, train the guys you got, teach them the system, and let them play the game. That's what I think. We can get Patrick Quinn, but we don't know if he's going to be a good fit, right? We don't know why the Ravens would even let him go. If he's not good, why would the Ravens let him go? Again, Corey Littleton. Why did the Rams let him go? Well, apparently he wasn't that good because as soon as we got him, he was garbage. So I just don't want to go through that again. That's a ton of money. So I think Raider Roy is correct. Leave the team the way it is, and let's just wait for this to start, and let's go. As always, Raiders.
Proto, thanks so much for the call, my man. Definitely appreciate you. And look, it's so funny, man. With me and the Patrick Queen situation, I don't want it to get twisted. I'm not pounding the table for the Raiders to go make a move for Patrick Queen. I just said, after reading Mo Moton's piece about some 8 bold training camp moves or moves that could be made before training camp, and Patrick Queen being acquired by the Raiders was one of them, I just thought, that wouldn't be a bad idea if they decided they wanted to go in that direction. If they felt that he was a fit, they're not going to give him $100 million like the Ravens gave Roquan Smith. And maybe they don't need him. Like you said, maybe they don't need him. I just know Spillane's not very good in coverage. And I know Divine Diablo is good, but he's one guy. Luke Masterson was an undrafted free agent last year who did some good things at times, but he's still learning. Darian Butler, same thing. Undrafted free agent who spent a lot of time in special teams. Is he going to be able to step up? Of course, they went out and they made the move for Amari Burney out of Florida, the former safety turned linebacker. They drafted him, so maybe he can, contribute and add to the mix. They have Curtis Bolton. He's mainly a special teamer. I mean, just when I look at the overall picture of the Raiders team, and maybe this is something that they would do during training camp, right? They might just go ahead and let them get some burn first and see what they have and then say, yeah, no, can't do it, right? Need an upgrade. Similar to what the Raiders did when they went out and got Denzel Perriman, right? They went out and got him because of injuries. All their linebackers were dropping like flies, and so they went out and made the move for Denzel Perriman. It turned out to be really good. Maybe at some point they look and say, yeah, the linebackers aren't cutting it. We need to make a move, and they go make a move for Patrick Queen. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're in training camp and they say, you know what? This is good. We're solid. Everything's coming along really good. Antonio Pierce has got these guys playing and flying around with their hair on fire. All good, no worries. And maybe Masterson takes another step in the right direction. Right now, it looks like Diablo and Spillane are going to be the starters. And one of the two guys obviously will be wearing the green dot. And right now, I feel like it's going to be Diablo, but Spillane has also said that he's going to have the opportunity to wear the green dot. So we'll see. Everything gets underway the 26th, the first day of practice. And please believe we'll be out there at the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center. So that's all I got for you, Raider Nation, for this Friday. Hopefully everyone has a fantastic weekend. I'll tell you right now, it's going to be HOTTTTT here in Las Vegas. Hot, right? It is going to be blazing. It's supposed to be 112, 13, 14, 15, 16, like all weekend long. So please believe if there's any water, I don't care if it's some puddles or what it is, I'm going to try to find my way to get in this water this weekend and try to stay cool a little bit. And I do encourage you, wherever you're at, stay hydrated, stay cool, take care of yourself. Always take care of your family. Always talk about that. Definitely appreciate you checking out the podcast and making the first listen each and every day. Like I said, we can't do this show without you. We can't do this show on YouTube without my man Ari at Ari Produces on Twitter. So until Monday, Raider Nation, that'll be the 17th. That'll be Josh Jacobs' contract day. A lot of eyes will be going on what's going on with Josh Jacobs in that contract. But we'll be back on Monday to talk about it and then some. So have a fantastic weekend. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.